Thank you, thank you. You don't mind if I stand up and move around every now and then, right? Because I feel like we need some more energy in the room. That's okay? Okay.
Sure.
So what does it mean to be human?
Speaking
No,
for
I'm
the
joking.
audience.
Okay. What does it mean to be human anyway? No, we're not getting there. Just wanted to be able to give a brief explanation of the panel name, right? Obviously, our introduction's up here, and thank you so much for coming out to see us speak. It's late in the day, and I know everybody wants to go party, but I promise you that this would be a great panel for you. First of all, I want to do our introductions up here, but I feel that the best way for everybody to introduce themselves, because who does a better introduction than you would on your own? So why don't we start here?
Yeah, thanks so much. Hey everyone, nice to see you, nice to meet you. Thanks some people for coming and supporting me as well. My name is Charles Slamowitz, and I'm a Web3 legal navigator. And that means that I help a lot of different companies. I've done 50 plus projects in Web3 and AI alone, from Recording Academy to Anna Delvey. I've done Tupac to Snoop Dogg, and I've done Azuki as well, just to name a couple. But what I realized too is that we have AI integrating into a lot of the emerging tech fields right now. And you're all here for a reason. You all love NFTs, or at least are interested in it. And from our perspective, like really helping the bigger projects and even the smaller ones navigate and guide the space is pivotal as an attorney, and that's why I stepped in and started my own firm.
Hi, thank you, Pablo, for the introduction. I'm Navodaya. I've been practicing for 10 years now. I got involved with cryptocurrency in 2020 and started my own law firm. And we are also working on a consultancy firm where we provide marketing, tech, incubation, as well as legal help for the Web3 client. And it's been a good journey for the last 2 years. We have worked on a lot of projects, and we have seen the regulations evolving throughout the world. So hopefully it will be a good panel for everybody to understand what NFT and whether AI would be a issue with respect to lawyers or not.
And I'm Pablo Segarra. I'm born and raised in the Bronx, New York, to Puerto Rican parents. I'm actually a retired police officer from New York. Went to law school, passed the bar, became an attorney, and then I left the country, where I've been living in the Dominican Republic for the past 5 years now. So very grateful of Web3, just because the fact that as attorneys, we can really practice from anywhere in the world and come together and kind of complain about clients in the same way, and really understand the same issues that we're all going through. So with that, let's start with the two components that we like to speak on in this panel, right? One of them is the AI role in the legal field. And the other part is basically this idea of, in Web3, should attorneys take this approach of like rebranding themselves as kind of a different type of approach than we normally would in the previous, I guess you could say, career that we've had, right? So why don't we start with a question with everybody by a raise of hands. Who here has used ChatGPT before? Okay. Who uses ChatGPT on the daily basis? Okay. Who uses ChatGPT for their job, for work? Oh, interesting. Okay, more than I thought. All right, so then let's start with that, because everybody knows what ChatGPT is. I don't have to explain it. Is it Charles or Charlie? What do you?
Yeah, you could call me Charlie.
Charlie.
That works.
Okay. Charlie, what do you think is the artificial intelligence role in the legal field? And it's not necessarily just ChatGPT, but in general AI.
Yeah, I heard a very good parable recently, which was when the refrigerator companies came out initially, the refrigerators and the companies did make some money, but it was the people that used the refrigerator that made the most money. The Coca-Colas of the world made much more money than the people who made the refrigerators themselves. And the way I see AI, it's almost a toolkit and a shelf that we're going to use more legal within. So I would kind of compare it almost to like a paralegal or legal assistant. As of right now, obviously AI is developing almost every day, but at the end of the day, if you choose to have work done by a paralegal and you submit it to court or you submit it to a client, you as the attorney are responsible at the end of the day. The same should apply too with AI as well. So if you use a shortcut or something else to help you, by all means. We didn't have the internet, while attorneys were still practicing. Now we all use the internet. So I see that the same way here with AI.
Yeah, I think AI has always been, at least machine learning has always been a part of legal field for a long time now. And we have to distinguish what machine learning is and what ChatGPT is doing. So we can always use AI or machine learning for coming up with the precedents which we can help with before the courts. But there's always going to be a change with respect to how we do the discovery, how we do research, how we do the menial work as contract drafting and to find issues with the contracts. But eventually, we'll always need as a lawyer to maybe negotiate the contracts or to argue matters before court, because eventually a human angle is always required for even for going for negotiations. If you have AI from both ends, who's going to win that? Yeah. There has to be a conclusion which has come to, as in parties have to.
It depends which ChatGPT model you have, right? That's what's going to.
Just got to pay for premium, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, it's a really interesting conversation because we were talking about. I went on to be fully 100% honest here. Do we use ChatGPT in our business, right? My entire outline that I created for today was ChatGPT. So that goes to show you how integrated it really is into our career as attorneys, right? And I've been, I've kind of been out on my own for some time. I haven't had the traditional legal job, working in a firm, working from the bottom, going my way up. So I can really experiment as much as I want to and kind of, as long as I don't cross that line, right? So with that, do we think that as attorneys, we have all these ethical obligations and rules? Do we think that is there any type of duty to disclose to our clients maybe that we have been using ChatGPT in some sort of way to write clauses or anything like that? Like the actual legal work itself. Do we think that we need to let our clients know that?
I think if we can build the clients, we should definitely disclose it to them. If you don't, then we don't have to.
Yeah, I think it really depends here. Like whenever you retain a client, you always want to be straightforward, honest, and have an intake call and say, in your contract, we may use certain softwares and services such as ChatGPT. The client wants to know, let them know. I think right now you actually have like a moral and legal obligation and ethics under the model rules. 1.1, comment 8 basically says that as attorneys, we must stay abreast with advancing technologies. I think we've reached a point right now where every attorney ought to at least experiment or understand what ChatGPT is, and I think that that's a big deal. Attorneys are always required to stay abreast, and this is such a big step in terms of tech advancement that should you not do it, I'd argue you may be negligent as an attorney. In terms of providing to the client, of course you're going to let them know that potentially we could use tools, but even if you were to just understand what ChatGPT is, even if you were to rule it out, I think that it is so pivotal in order to check, to see, is there a better way to save money for your client? Is there a better way to be more efficient? Is there a better way to stay on top of the law? And if you as an attorney are not even willing to expand and try and grow that way, it's a little bit concerning for the client and people involved.
And I think that's a great point. That's why I asked the question, because I'm also a member of the task force for New York State Bar Association on emerging digital finance. And we speak about this kind of in side conversations, right? It's like, how deep do we go in terms of this AI component? Are we pushing ethical limits? Are we pushing ethical rules? And I agree with you. I think it's a matter of a simple disclosure, right? It's just simply telling them, look, we may use this, and the results of that, I think, are worth it, because we were also having this conversation outside where it's thinking of it more like a paralegal, right? Like, what are the roles of the paralegal that we can kind of automate? So with that, right, let's say, imagine meeting an attorney 40 years ago, right? My mom was an attorney 40 years ago in New York State. And she used to make fun of me when I was going through law school, because she would basically tell me that you didn't have to go to the library. I had to actually open up books and read the law, right? Where do we think with the AI component, and let's take it back actually. Let's go back into law school, right? And then we'll kind of work our way up. As in law school, do we think that law schools should implement this? Because there's been a whole debate in terms of education in New York State New York State City specifically. I believe they've actually banned it from the education of students. Do we think that law schools, from our experience in law schools, and especially you went to law school in India, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Do we think that the schools should implement it and kind of push in on it at an earlier stage, as opposed to letting us figure it out when we get out of school?
That's a very good question. I think overall it's hard to speak to like the academic and the pedagogy there. At the end of the day, I think law schools are pretty antiquated as it is. I went to Emory Law School. I did Stanford Masters before that, and I realized, like, especially in high academia, it's not very applicable. So even though I practice law in New York, you just learn the general law. You learn, like, somebody was selling something across state lines, what does it look like, and it wasn't that applicable. So I see maybe like there are certain courses or potentially a class or requirement in the future, but it's always the law firms that, quote, train you at the end of the day, or at least that's how the ecosystem works right now. So it's harder to kind of tell schools right away, but what I think too is CLEs and continuing legal education and thinking about it once a lawyer becomes a lawyer. Are there certain requirements? You have certain ethics and moral requirements right now that you have to take. Why can't you take one on emerging technology? Why can't you learn about blockchain as an attorney or AI? Why can't it be required? Law moves very slow, but I think with the huge jump of technology that we're all encountering right before our eyes, the law ought to keep up because we're going to be left behind.
So I've seen, as in, during my college days, as in, we've been taught how to use books to find out case laws and to how to do research, but we did not actually do that. But we've been taught that. So I think it's good to teach students as in how to use AI systems for their research and for all those purposes. But they should not use it till the time they have actually understood how to use the old tools and how to do research on their own. Because eventually, if they rely on AI for whole research or maybe drafting or for all those purposes, they would not be able to find out the mistakes which AI does. And if it comes to a time where AI is taking all the decisions, then actually, do we need human lawyers for that?
Then NFT lawyers are not human, right?
Humans,
Exactly.
yeah.
Okay, so we spoke about outside too, where it was like this idea of where do you think it should be implemented, right? Like we were saying, like Westlaw and things like that. I know recently Bloomberg, I believe it was, came out with their own like GPT model, right? Where do you think we can implement it more from the client's perspective to be able to keep maybe costs down for them, right? In terms of, and then also from our perspective, where we're not spending so much time, right? Maybe we can automate some things, which I'm all about automation 100%, Zapier, all types of things, right? So I guess the question is, where do you think we should kind of lean in more into it as opposed to step back from AI?
Yeah, great question. And I think overall, we really have to think about when we service our clients, we have the ability now to be a lot more bespoke and unique, whether it be through healthcare, through legal, or through finance. We could use machine learning to understand our clients' needs better. We could learn throughout our entire ecosystem and through our entire firm, through all the contracts we've done, which contract terms worked better or not. I invested in a company called DraftWise. I'm an angel investor and also on the board there as well, because I see the technology in working with different contracts and trying to understand them better. So when it comes to your question and implementation of AI, I'm arguing now, and I've published in Columbia Law Journal, a few other journals, like I'm very big on pushing certain like legislation and laws and policy moving forward because lawyers really need to advocate in order to stick with tech. And what I'm arguing right now is saying that we ought to use the prompts for ChatGPT as trade secrets. If you're going to customize something towards your client, you ought to be able to protect those certain prompts that you're using under those conditions to shelf. Coca-Cola has secret ingredients, and Coca-Cola did well with refrigeration, if you remember. Now we have the secret ingredients with the GPT, and I don't really see a distinction here in terms of where the law is.
Well, that's really interesting, as in that should be
that's
trade
amazing.
secret. Yeah. But see, I understand this. In fact, as in everybody is going to eventually use AI for their own work. But the problem I see here is that it becomes expensive for small law firms or individual practitioners to get all this AI because it's an investment for them as well. But it becomes easier for big law firms to automate more work and charge more. So it's bad for always. It's always bad for the small players in the market. But eventually, you have to start working on it and maybe eventually use automation with the AI. But you'll always require how do you actually work as a human and not completely rely upon that. As in, prompts are actually always very important for any work you've done. So prompts are actually what is going to decide as in whether the lawyer is actually competent enough to get the work done for the client.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off that too, because the law is pretty insular. When you have a professional organization, you have doctors, you have dentists, you have lawyers, they try to protect the people in which they've created in a way. Developers are more at risk, I feel, than lawyers in terms of the advancement of technology because they don't have a professional group or association dictating what the laws are. So we had a case, Do Not Pay, which is like a kind of a robot lawyer. And they said they would pay somebody $1 million if they were to put in a headphone to go to the Supreme Court of the United States and say, whatever was said into the headphone, they should just repeat. And if a lawyer did that, they'd pay them $1 million. Thought about it, I'm like, nah, I couldn't do it. But ultimately, the Bar Association said, no, it's actually, we're condemning this, and whoever does this is gonna lose their license. So it almost seems as though while you have these spurts of advancement, you also have the insular nature of legal as it is. So it's gonna be harder for the consumer to detect at the end of the day who's using the software, who's not, how much time are they doing, and that's just something that is gonna have to work out in free market.
Yeah, and it's such an interesting, I guess, career choice for me, right? Because the legal community, as we know, we're based in such tradition, right? And I don't think that really should change, because I really think that I'm very happy and very proud to be a lawyer, and I want to be able to follow, right, all of the ethical requirements, because I do think it's important, right? But then we have this whole huge industry that we work in, right, with Web3, where it's basically like a lot of founders and people in the industry are kind of like, let's throw that crap out the window. We don't really care about any of your ethical requirements, right? Even though I have to consistently explain to people the requirements that we have, right? Founders as we deal with them. So let's kind of pivot a little bit to the entrepreneur's perspective in all of this, right? Because we have a couple in the room here, right? So entrepreneur's perspective from this. What are some of the benefits and some of the risks of in-house, let's say entrepreneurs in-house, just saying, you know what, we're gonna automate some of the minor stuff like contracts, right? Like, and let's not just say, let's talk about how, yes, right now you can go online and get a template for anything pretty much nowadays, right? We know some of them work, some of them don't, some of them are good, some of them are bad, right? What if an entrepreneur is like, you know what, I'm gonna strictly use ChatGPT to write all of my contracts for my company? What are some of the risks that you would see? What are some of the benefits you would see? Where can they do it? Where can't they do it? What are clauses? You know, like let's kind of, it's a loaded question. I know it's a lot.
No, it's a great question.
It's late, I'm trying to wake up.
Because at the end of the day, the biggest risk, if you're gonna use ChatGPT as a contract or work legal and not use a lawyer, is somebody finding out that you use ChatGPT without consulting with the lawyer. Because as I just mentioned, law is very insular. And in my view, and I've clerked for the Supreme Court in New York, and I've worked for judges, and I know that judges are biased. I hate to say it. There are a lot of studies, about 83% of judges have a decision, like once they read right away before changing, you know, they may not change their mind. If an attorney or a lawyer may see that there's some sort of ChatGPT or AI mechanism, no lawyer was involved, they may read it a lot more closely. They may be biased against it because it's almost threatening their jobs and their career, and us as humans don't like that. So I think the biggest risk here is, you know, even ChatGPT right away, after a couple of iterations, I asked it a question just to see. I think 3 out of 7 were actually completely correct in terms of causes of action. So it's definitely getting there, but it said at the very bottom, you must consult with the lawyer first. There's already that disclaimer there right away.
So
a
even
lawyer got
AI
to them.
has
Even AI has got the disclaimer, yeah. So I'd say
See,
that.
Of course, as in, if you use ChatGPT for your contract drafting, eventually you'll see code. And the person who uses a lawyer is going to win the matter, because the person who is using ChatGPT, if the entrepreneurs are using ChatGPT for drafting your clauses and they don't understand what's written in the clause, they are not going to understand how this contract is going to work. So the person who is interpreting it, the lawyer on the other side who is interpreting it actually and making suggestion that this has to be changed, when it comes to negotiations, the entrepreneurs cannot do the negotiation because they don't know the intricacies of what has been written and how it will be interpreted before the court. So it has to be there. Yeah.
And I empathize too, so I didn't mention beginning, but so I practiced law over 7 years, but before then, the reason I became a lawyer to begin with was because I was an entrepreneur and I ran into the same issue. I said, am I gonna pay a lawyer so much money to like wait all this time to get a contract back? How do I know that I'm paying correctly? I had to sit in a boardroom for 2 hours waiting for a simple NDA to disclose an invention of mine, and I almost lost an entire deal. And I realized that lawyers have to think business-minded as well, because even if you're the best lawyer, you may, like, as an entrepreneur, you may be like, that's great, but I'm trying to get X, Y, Z done. So for me, I think that it's important to kind of integrate and work with contracts, and I get it. I'd say in Web3 and NFTs specifically, you do need a lawyer. I hate to say it. We have low-cost options just because this is such a new field. If you're doing something that's like so tried and true, you're doing something like in healthcare with HIPAA that's like hasn't changed in a while, maybe I'd say, yeah, go with ChatGPT or something else because the precedent is there. But if you're thinking about something in emerging tech, NFT, AI, I wouldn't recommend it because we just don't have enough guidance in case law. But if you're really thinking about, oh, this is very simple, I'm going to loan someone a loaf of bread, he's going to pay it back in 2 weeks, and X, Y, Z, yeah, I don't know if you need an attorney for that or not. Much better if you do. Maybe if you get a bagel or above, hire an attorney, but it's up to you.
Just to add just one point. So you don't only need a lawyer, you actually need a lawyer who understands blockchain and cryptocurrency and the tech part of it, because most of the lawyers, at least what I have seen in South Asian countries, is that there are lawyers who are actually working on cryptocurrency, but they don't understand what blockchain is. So unless they understand what blockchain is, they cannot give you a proper opinion of your product or what you are getting into.
So at the end of the day, right, as we're wrapping up here, at the end of the day, is the message, right, that people can take away that NFT lawyers need to be human, right, because that's the name of the panel, but with a little ChatGPT behind them, with a little AI behind them, like, is it that we got to find this, which I think it is, that we have to find this medium of incorporated and understanding, because we spoke about this too, where I'm always on trying to take the perspective of putting my mind in the perspective of the founders that I work with, right? What is it that I can provide them that, yes, I can get billed for, and what are some stuff that it's like, look, you can kind of do this on your own, and you really don't need me to do this, right? And I'm always kind of trying to find that intricate line where I don't get them in trouble, where I don't get in trouble, and it's a tough game to play in this space specifically. I think that's the message then, because I think we kind of crafted that together, that we need to find that both components of good of each one to kind of put them together, right?
Yeah, and I think as technology continues to grow, stay smart, stay abreast of what's going on, especially you in the NFT space and whatnot. But also make sure that you find a lawyer that you really do trust, that you can have open conversations with. Hey, I tried ChatGPT. Do you think this is a good idea? Have you used it before? Transparency is still one of the most critical aspects in the legal field as well as the blockchain.
Just to sum up in one single sentence, so ChatGPT gives wings to the lawyers, but it becomes a paper plane in the hands of entrepreneurs.
Love it. Any questions? Any questions at all? Anybody? Even if ChatGPT asks it? No, you want to pump into your phone a question for ChatGPT? No? Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
you all
so
for
much.
coming.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.